Perfect.
What's going on, everybody? Patrick Kirby here from Do Good Better Consulting. Happy Friday. It is happy hour. Yes, this is a real beer because we are grown adults doing grown-up things like fundraising, and I am ecstatic today to talk to you about special events. It is a crazy special events season. We all drive ourselves crazy with this stuff, and so it's super important that we kind of talk about how to throw the perfect event. And so I would like to introduce my friend Paul Hankel. Paul, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you very much. And so I'm going to let Paul introduce himself, kind of what he does, and then we're going to dive right into all things events. Go. Paul, who are you? What do you do? Tell me why you're here.
Perfect. Thanks for having me, Patrick, and welcome everybody. We're going to be talking about one of my favorite things in the world, and that is organizing, managing, hosting, and throwing events. It's a little bit about myself. I have been a consultant for, I don't even know how many years now. I work with a variety of clients doing three main things. One of them, event management, the other one, marketing, and then the other thing I like to delve into a little bit is some business development stuff. Currently, I have 11 clients locally, regionally, and I have the pleasure of getting to do cool stuff like this on the side, which is consult. I do have a passion for nonprofits. I've worked for a handful of them throughout my career, and fundraising is one of the most important things that you all do, and I understand that, and so I like to apply my talents and experience to doing things like throwing nonprofit events, and I am here today to answer any questions you might have, and thanks, Patrick, for having me.
It's going to be a blast. So a lot of people, unlike me, who I am obsessed with special events, loathe it. They hate it because it is a pain in the ass. They're time consuming. They don't get the ROI on it. I think a lot of it is misconceptions on either you're doing it wrong or you're not looking at the bright side of some of these things. I've always thought that doing a special event is trapping people in a room, and you get to tell your story to as many people as possible who are forced to listen to you in this sort of like fun environment that you've set. Tell me why events in your case, and using some business examples or maybe nonprofit examples, tell me your opinion on why special events are so important, I think, in the nonprofit industry specifically.
I think they're important for any business organization or association for the simple fact that it is, like you said, basically a night about you. It's your chance to promote your business, organization, or company. It's your chance to sell yourself to current vendors, potential vendors, new relationships, and it is also a chance to raise, in a lot of cases, much needed funds for your ongoing operations. So there's three reasons right there why they're important. But I mean, I can't think of, besides some cheaper, marketing tactics, I can't think of a better way to promote your organization, your mission, your goals than to get, several hundred people in a room for 6 hours with you. So that is why where my passion for events comes from is, it's an opportunity to promote and raise money.
It is the best. And of course, then you can tell who's really on your side from a mission standpoint too. I mean, if you're willing to give up time as a donor or as a supporter and show up at an event on a weekend, on a night, staying time away from your kids, unless of course you really hate your kids. Like if you're spending time away from your family or your work or your business or your side hustle or your love somewhere else, and you're going to an event, that tells me something about you as an individual. Either you like to party, which is great, we can work with that, or you're really into the mission. And I think the pre and the post of what you're doing to interact with some of these people who are showing up to your events, I think is super important.
Sure.
Go.
And you and I have talked before, on average ticket price for a higher end event in Fargo is going to be $50 to, maybe upwards of $200. So if you're able to get, that should blow your mind as an event manager or event coordinator. If you're able to get 400 people in a room that are willing to pay $200 for a ticket, well, if you do a good job, imagine how much they'd be willing to donate. It baffles my mind that people are willing to pay, $200 per ticket to come and support different organizations, but they do. And that's why it's so important to do it correctly. And it's so important to maximize your potential at those events.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about the perfect event. Tell me what the perfect event looks like.
I love that you called it that, this chat that, because I have been organizing and managing events for 15 years. I would say I've done in the hundreds by now, obviously. But I have never been to organize or manage a perfect event, and I don't think I ever will.
Because, Paul, it doesn't exist.
Did your mind just blow? Nothing is ever going to go perfectly. I'm sure, our fellow event planners that are joining us on this conversation can attest. Something is always going to go wrong. There's going to be a last minute change. A vendor's not going to show up. A silent auction item's not going to get dropped off. Can't wait to talk about that a little bit later too. It's basically, being an event manager means you're really flexible. You're really organized, and you're really good at making just last minute decisions, because that's what you have to be to have a successful event.
Yeah. So there's no such thing as a perfect event. So let's get that through everybody's head. But so let's talk about how you can do as great of a job forward facing on making sure that nobody really knows about the shit show that's happening behind the scenes. But how do you start establishing that? So what are the things that you have to do beforehand in order to make whatever bumps are going to happen during the event or before or afterwards less stressful for you? So let's talk about some of your more poignant points on what to do before an event so that we don't have to worry about some of these hiccups.
The biggest stressors for me in my career doing this has been, I would say, number one overall is weather. Had a lot of canceled events because of weather. My number two would also be attendance. And, I can talk about that for hours. The stress of, okay, we have this great event. Now who's going to show up? And that speaks to marketing, that speaks to planning, that speaks to your relationships with your partners, making sure you're getting all of the pertinent info about the event out there so that people know about it. So that's my two main priorities before the event begins. Day of the event is just the normal stress of vendors showing up. Is everything where it needs to be? Are we set? Audio and video, which you and I have talked about. I think we both agreed upon the fact that, visual issues, video issues, sure, that's going to happen, but audio mistakes are unforgivable. If your patrons cannot hear the message or information that you're trying to get out to them at your event, then why did you even have it? This is your chance to be in the spotlight, get your message out there and raise funds, so your microphone better work. And
if in the first 7 minutes of this video and this audio podcast, the most important thing that's been said right there is bad audio at an event is unforgivable. And you have a room full of people who are interested in what you are doing, and they can't hear a lick. You have lost everything you've done leading up to that point is missed. You missed it. You failed miserably at that one. So that's unbelievable. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about driving attendance. I think a lot of people who are doing events throughout the year, especially maybe even in summertime, where you're a little more flexible on costs or whatever that case may be. What are some of the ways that we can drive attendance in towns and in places that do a lot of events that everybody's kind of stressed out and like, well, I already went to this event or I already went to this. So give us a couple hints on what we can do better to drive attendance.
So it's a really interesting time for promoting events right now. I have seen, and I'm sure you've seen as well, the monster shift to basically just digitally advertising your events.
Yep.
Just the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagrams. There's been a constant of email, constant contact, MailChimp, all of that stuff. But I've also seen a little bit of a renaissance in just doing the little things like postcards that you mail, mailers. I've gotten back to one of the clients I'm working with right now, the Red River Zoo. We're big on posters over there because we have that big, beautiful venue. So we'll go print up 30 posters, hang 10 of them there, and 20 out in the community at our neighbors' places and things like that. So there is a massive shift to digital, but I don't want any of my clients to forget about the old school events. I've probably told you, Patrick, this story 10 million times, but whenever I sit down and talk about a budget for events or marketing, I always say, hey, how much did it cost to promote this event or special you were having 15 years ago before Facebook? So I don't think us spending $100 boosting this event on Facebook is that big of a deal when it would have probably cost you $2,500 for a print ad 15 years ago.
So, the other thing too is you go old school. So I think people use digital promotion and things as an excuse not to go talk to people who you know are going to show up to the event,
100%.
who have connections, who are your sponsors, to say who is actually attending from your sponsorship. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is we got a big bank, like a big, well-known bank in town. We're like, oh, cheers, everybody. We've got a big bank. And then that's the last you talk with that big bank. What are you not doing? Connecting with the person that got you the sponsorship to say who in your organization is going to be at our event. Do they have an expectation that this is a fundraising event, or is this just a party you're throwing? And if you're not having that conversation and they're just filling butts in seats, you deserve no money coming to you as an organization, because you didn't put in the work to just have a simple conversation about trying to convey the importance of why you're having the event in the first place. And it's something that I cannot stress enough. It's a conversation. It's just a conversation you're having. And if you can do that, it's just part of the bit. So if you can get away from your desk and let the marketing piece digitally do its work, so you can have a one-on-one conversation with the important people that you're inviting to the actual event, your fundraising goes off in a totally different direction.
100%. And at that point, then you can start talking about, hey, you're a business partner of ours. Can I offer you a full table, And another thing that I always bring up with my clients is, yes, digital's cheap and easy. You can do it from your desk, but is that 78-year-old retiree rich donor probably on Facebook as often as you are and going to see all the information about this event? I would guess not. So you cannot completely abandon the old school ways of promoting events, like, posters and mailers and stuff like that. It's hard to even call them old school because we're talking 10 years ago, 15 years ago. That's how they're seen now in this digital age. And, it's sometimes cost effective to do everything at once, especially if this is your one big fundraiser. How can you not put the money that is needed into the marketing of said fundraiser, And that's a constant conversation I have.
Right.
And,
so we've done our due diligence. We've spoken to our donors. We have set everything up for the event. We kind of know who's going to be there. Day of goes crazy, and we probably know that some hiccup is going to happen. So you tell some of the best stories of day of hiccups. I hope you tell the one I'm hoping you tell on wing eating contest. But what are some of the ways that you have handled some front-facing issues that could have derailed an event, and how did you handle those things in a way that nobody outside of maybe 3-4 people knew what on earth was going wrong, and how you were trying to scramble to fix? Because there's a real difference between somebody who just like everything's on fire, to somebody who goes, oh, there's some things going wrong, but we've got this all handled. We do it with a smile, because that's the front-facing piece, even though inside it's burning and eating us up, because no event is perfect. So what are some of the things that you've seen gone wrong, and how have you diffused them before they become huge bombs and ruin an event? Yeah.
So when I was about to say if something goes wrong, but it will. So when something goes wrong at your event, or not the way you were planning, there's 3 steps that I always preach. And it's number 1 is to remain calm. You are the leader. You are in charge. You are making the decisions. So if you're walking around, the guy with his hands up in the air, or, the building's on fire.
First of all, I'm offended, because that's how I walk around, sir.
I am 100% not going to lie. Has there been some very, very, very close calls for me? Yes. But, I think having done this so long and so many times, remaining calm, if your staff comes up to you flustered, like, we're out of napkins. Oh my gosh, we just broke all the plates, blah, blah, blah. Has that probably happened to a seasoned event planner before? Yes. But even if it hasn't happened to you, if you can remain calm, that's step number 1. And then have anticipated as much as you possibly can. Like, what are we going to do if our caterer doesn't show up? What are we going to do if the band doesn't show up, which is a very real possibility sometimes? What are we going to do? What are we going to do if the lights turn off in the middle? Do we have backup generators? Again, this is your one big fundraiser of the year. Why would you not put, some funds, sometimes some thought into contingencies? And then, so that's number 2 is to remain. Number 1 is to remain calm. Number 2 is to, have anticipated some of these needs. And then number 3 is to have options. Don't chain yourself to one solution, because every event is different. Every organization or business, that's throwing the event is different. The needs are different. The goals are different for each event. So it might sound a little bit vague, but have options to each problem. Have a couple different caterers on standby a couple days before, just in case something goes wrong. Have a backup food plan. Did you plan on having vegetarian or vegan attendees come to your restaurant? Do you have a vegetarian appetizer and meal option? All of these little things. And I mean, I have a great checklist that I've developed over doing this. I'd love to send it to anybody who wants it. It's I use it mentally because I have it memorized. But it's my day of checklist. What could possibly go wrong? Where do my issues when I'm managing an event usually arise? And then I go from there. And basically, at this point, if I hear a problem, most of the time I'm like, oh, okay, we are going to do this or this. And then you need to make the decisions. You cannot waffle. You're in charge. The event's going on, whether or not you have napkins or not. So what are you going to do? You've got to be ready to make the decision.
And we're those of us who are doing events and those of us who are running events are usually kind of the creative type anyways. Mm-hmm. And so if you are so rigid, if it's not in the plan, I cannot do it. And there's no flexibility within your brain to kind of move in and out. Mm-hmm. Boy, that you're in deep, man, because part 100%. Of your creative solution solving, the problem solving skills is really critical when it comes to like the day of event kind of thing. So mm-hmm. I love that. Sure. So we get through the event. There's some fires we've already put out. Everybody's had a good time. The post-event stuff, I think, is probably more critical than the event itself. Mm-hmm. Outside of audio at the event, the post-event task and steps. Mm-hmm. Critical for your organization, and then how successful your next event is. Give me some of the highlights or the high-level stuff that you have to do right after an event.
Sure. Number one is getting with whoever's in charge of finances, locking down all of the donations, all of the financials. Number two, and this is, I always say it has to be within 24 to 36 hours, ideally. I know weekends get tough if it's a Friday event sometimes, sure. And you don't want your email to get buried by sending it on a Saturday morning, so that's 40 emails deep by the time they get around to their inbox on Monday morning. But within a day or so, you need to sit down at your computer and send not only a thank you note to your attendees and patrons, but also to your vendors, and any sponsors and anybody else that was involved in the event. Number one, that's the polite thing to do. They assumedly just helped your organization raise much needed funds. Number two, you and I were talking about this a little bit ago. It's another opportunity to open up dialogue. It's a lane to furthered relationships and communications. One of the questions I always get asked is, thanks so much for having us. How much money did you raise? And you and I were talking, even if you don't have those numbers quite yet, that's actually a good thing. It's, hey, we're still tallying, the total. We feel really good about it. We had a really successful event. I'll let you know that information. You'll be first on my list. That opens up an opportunity for you to contact them again in a week, in 4 or 5 days when you do have that information, instead of just that one initial thank you email and then it's done. It's not just thanking them. It's using these thank you notes as a means of continuing the relationship, roping them in for the next thing you're planning, saying, hope we can have you at next year's. You were great. It's basically a vehicle to continued relationships.
And even more importantly, and again, we need to send out thank you notes, because if you don't send one, you're not going to get another gift, period. Right? Yep. So you get your handwritten thank you notes to the ones who need them, the bulk thank you notes to everybody else who needs them. You don't send them, you don't get another gift. The other thing, too, is that even after the event itself, 6 weeks, 8 weeks afterwards, this is what we raised and this is what we did with your money. To associate impact with the amount of money that they donated is unbelievably critical. And you would be surprised, well, you're not surprised, everyone else listening to his is probably surprised that not a lot of people do that. And what an unbelievable impact that makes on the donor's belief that you're now still paying attention to what they did 2 months ago. Because people have the attention span of gnats. They don't even remember that they probably went to the event. They're going, oh, that's really interesting that you did this scholarship, or you provided this program, or this service was done because I helped. Now, when you reapproach them a couple of months later for maybe an appeal or an online ask or an event, they remember that you spoke to them and didn't ask them for a damn thing, which is so important.
Exactly.
And they've given you permission to reach out to them because they showed up at an event, and they give them your email address or whatever. So use that to your advantage, right?
100%. And, one of the most effective, I think it's ASPCA, one of the most effective campaigns of that is, hey, for $10 a month, you can support this animal and give them all the shots and food and care they need. So they're basically building a relationship with you through mailers, through a $10 a month subscription. Like, if you are not getting an email list from your event, that's probably number 2 most important besides just the funds, is that email list, because that's your link to furthered communications. In 6 months, you drop them all an email. Hey, look, this is basically your money in action. Here's the classroom we were able to build with the funds we raised at the gala 6 months ago. You got to do this stuff. And it speaks to building the event, building momentum for the next year. It builds relationships. It's got to be a top 5 priority for you as an event manager.
Yeah, for sure. I would be remiss if we didn't bring up, and then close your earmuffs on, everybody. Silent auction.
Oh boy.
It is the bane of most people's existence. It is probably one of the most time-consuming things that you can do. And by the way, there are other people who do those things, right? I mean, I've never seen a silent auction before, so I clearly don't know that are they at all the events? Tell me a little bit about how to so walk me through, if you had to convince somebody not to do a silent auction. Convince me. I'm going to give you the floor. Convince me, Paul, that I don't have to do a silent auction. Why?
I will just give you the spiel that I would give a client that I'm sitting down with a gentleman next week to talk about emceeing and managing his event. So what I would say about silent auctions is, yes, is it a great way to bring in vendors and for outside businesses to advertise themselves at your event? Yes, it is. However, in my vast experience, the amount of time that it takes to plan, structure, get gifts, organize those gifts, manage it at the event, and now purchase the software that it takes to run a live auction or silent auction at your event. Is it worth it to do so? I'm not going to say a flat out no, but in a lot of cases, no, it is not. I can tell you countless times where I have seen upwards of between 40 and 60 man hours spent managing a silent auction that only nets, 10 grand. 6 grand. Are there some with great trips and really valuable prizes that net, 25 to 30,000? Yes. But are those common? No. So, I always ask, do you have the manpower and low enough stress levels to manage a silent auction while you're trying to raise cash money from your patrons at this event? The answer is a lot of times no. I don't know the origination story of silent auctions. I think it was a great idea at the time, but what I've started trying to do is shift to income or funds generating activities at the event that simply take 1 or 2 staff or volunteers to host or man, such as, wine pulls, or guess how many marbles are in the jar, 50-50 raffles. To me, rather than the headache of planning an entire event yourself and then, the silent auction, I don't have enough items for it. Where is everybody going to give these items to me? Where do I keep them until the event?
How are we going to work checkout? Well, exactly. We've got 200 items and 250 attendees.
Somebody dropped off a bunch of items that are obviously used.
How many people are dropping off items a day before the event?
The day of the event. Yep. Yeah. That happens routinely, or, bringing items that, are a great thought, but don't really fit. Well, I don't want to offend them. So do I put this, used item in my silent auction, or do I not, and then risk offending them? No more donations from them going forward. So
you're 100% right. And I'm sort of in your camp of leaning towards, if you're going to do a silent auction, do an upper echelon silent auction where there's like 10, 15, 20 really good $250, $400 packaged items together that they can kind of bid on. Or I'm really seeing a lot of Irish auctions where you buy raffle tickets in bulk and just drop them into jars and buckets, which is a really interesting way that you don't have to really bid on anything. put them around the room and force them to walk around in between bars or in between tastings or whatever you do for your event. The other thing too is imagine how much time you spend on doing silent auction. And let's just use your example, 40 to 50 man hours. If you put 40 to 50 man hours or woman hours into talking with donors about major gifts or priorities of your organization or building relationships with people that you know are in it to win it for your organization, imagine what you would raise in comparison to a silent auction. It's a no-brainer. So
I always say, you know, and if my points didn't stick, I always say, okay, so 40, let's just say conservatively that you task yourself or somebody to do this for 40, let's say 40 man hours conservatively. So if I'm just going to assume that it's an employee that you task with this, let's just say it's $15 an hour. Do you really want to just that one employee, that time investment of $600 to possibly raise $4,000 to $5,000 at a smaller type function? You know, is it probably worth it if your silent auctions raise $25,000? Yes, but you have to be honest. Is this going to net me a sum that is equivalent to literally losing an employee for an entire week and paying them to manage this? Because it is frustrating. It's time consuming. Is it effective? I couldn't say yes or no. I've seen it work outstandingly where we've raffled off motorcycles and trips. I've seen it go completely bust where we've had, you know, people thought something was authentic and it wasn't. And, you know, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but so I won't give specifics. But I mean, it's hit or miss. And yeah, it's a very, very, it can be very, very stressful. It can be done effectively and efficiently, but that is not always the case. And to do that nowadays, you have to get software that costs quite a bit of money to manage these live auctions.
Yeah.
There has been a move, you know, you don't even have to be at the event to bid on some of these live auctions, but you do have to purchase the software to, you know, give to your vendors and patrons to be able to bid. So there's that cost again. So like I said, I've been shifting towards trying activities at events, you know, like I said, wine pull, what's in the bag, 50-50 raffles, you know, and you would be surprised, like it's a little bit here, a little bit there, but if you've got 5 or 6 different interactive activities where people are buying tickets to them, you'd be surprised how fast you can accrue $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 from those, you know?
That is 100%. And again, it to reiterate everything, if you are using your time wisely prior to the event, and instead of concentrating on some little things and nickeling and diming at those events, and you are building relationships and you're using the time leading up, telling your story and telling about how important that this event is and how you need players in the room to make sure that, you know, you're getting in touch with people and you commanding the room because you have your audio system that is top notch, and you're actually getting them to listen to what you have to say, and you're doing a program. Do not do an event if you don't have a program, because you have them there. Do it. And it doesn't matter what you're doing. Don't need to talk about things for 30 minutes, but at least get the message across, your mission, why you're there, and what your impact is from you being at that event. You're never going to have a perfect one, but you can have one that's really, really, really effective with those particular tools.
Sure. And the last thing I want to touch on with the auctions is live auctions. Those are pretty great. I do know, you know, I can tell you there is an initial cost because, in my opinion, I have gotten to the point where I'm like, you need to hire an MC for the evening to host your event or an auctioneer. They are professionals. What they do is literally open up those purse strings for you. So I've got, you know, I've had clients that were unsure about it, but I've always said that it is 100% worth it. We've got some real professionals here locally and regionally, and they will do it, you know, especially for nonprofits. They are willing to do it for cheaper than you'd think. So it's, I mean, that is a cost that I am going to champion because it's effective, you know.
100%.
Yeah, and I think you could back me up as you MC some stuff every once in a while, don't you, Patrick?
Oh, I do. I got some stories that It'd be we'll just do fundraising after dark, and we'll just tell all those stories, and we'll have like 17 more of these, and then we'll all do it. Yeah.
We'll have to do that segment.
Yes. Paul, thank you so much for being here.
You're very welcome.
I'm going to drop your information in the comments when I repost for the replay, but tell people how they can get a hold of you if they have any questions, they want to get a checklist, they want to talk to you about hosting and managing or running through an event. How do they get a hold of you? Go.
Sure. You can just send me an email to bespoke, BESPOKEFM@gmail.com. Otherwise, you can just get a hold of me on Facebook, however you want to do it. I'm a busy guy, so probably just try Facebook or email first. Other than that, I would love to help out. Send anybody any information or checklists they might need. Event planning is truly one of the joys of my life. I really, really like doing it. I have a passion for doing it. And it doesn't have to be this stressful thing that you're avoiding putting into motion on your calendar because it's stressful for you. You have people like Patrick and I out here that can help you with that very easily, and we'd love to do so. So get a hold of me if you have any questions.
I love it, my friend. I will drop your information in the comments as well as you're watching this replay. Drop your questions. We'll start answering those within both Do Good Better consulting page, and we'll do it in the Do Gooders Network page as well. Thank you very much. Hey, have yourself a wonderful weekend. Happy Friday. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you later. Bye.
Thanks, Patrick.